Oh my goodness, my people. I love you guys so much. Oh, I've missed you mad. You guys rock. Mark, thank you so much. That's so sweet. I was getting ready to come on, and then I saw that you'd been on for 5 minutes. So I was like, well, I don't want to enter Mark's live. And I just thought it was so cute that you were like, where's Jess? She hasn't been on. So yeah, I have a super good excuse. Not that I want an excuse, but one of my kids is sick. I think I told you guys. I'm gonna just forget about that thing. If something falls onto the ground, it's out of my jurisdiction. I'm not gonna risk kicking over my set that is so precarious. So thanks so much for being here, my lovelies. Let me see what you guys are saying. The like on your way in. Yes, that would be great if you don't mind hitting the like. Where's my creepy thumb? There's the creepy thumb. Hit that creepy thumb if you don't mind. And hello, everybody. Bex, happy belated birthday. We know that Bex's birthday was yesterday, which was so cool because I got her hat sent off to her finally yesterday before I even knew it was her birthday. I want to talk about me, Toby Keith, me. Who the world is Toby Keith? So I want to talk about, I've got some good notes, which is good since my brain's gonna go blank on me. I'm just so happy to see you guys that I can't even think straight. It's been way too long. Friday, is that right? You guys know weekends are rough for me to not make videos, and I was pretty sure that there was no way I was going to be able to make one. And then yesterday with sick kid, that was rough. And kid is sick again today, which is why I couldn't get on earlier, but everything's under control, I think. Fingers crossed. He has a teleconference with the doctor at 4:30. I won't be needed for that, but anyway, it sucks having a sick kid. But thank goodness that I was home, because before when I worked 50 hours a week, I never, ever, ever missed work. Never, ever, ever. Which was why it didn't work out, was because I was just giving too much. And that's just my work ethic. I have a very strong work ethic. So even though I don't expect to make a single penny from this, it's part of my work ethic to just be consistent, reliable, predictable. That's what I'm all about. I try to be as stable as possible because, truth be told, I'm not always so stable. I mean, who is, right? But there's just so much chaos in the world and so much chaos in my life, especially when I was growing up, which I wanted to talk with you guys about some more. That was my coping strategy, was being reliable, consistent, and predictable. And that leaves a lot of room open for spontaneity. But without that kind of structure and foundation, no, that doesn't work for me. That just don't fly. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Mr. Obnoxious today. So who in the world is this Toby guy? Am I supposed to know? Kaboom, Monique. So hello to everybody. Thank you so much for coming in. I miss you guys like mad. Oh, right. The country star. Thank you. The guy who passed away, was he like 62 years old? And yeah, it has been a while, Monique. Nice to see you. And let's see, I'm listening from work, so may not be able to comment very much. CN red flags. Oh, that's cute. I gotta highlight that. Nice to meet you. I don't know that I've met you by that handle, so welcome. I see that you have a couple other comments before that one, but I love your handle. Seeing red flags. Yeah, they're everywhere. So let's see. Let's start with a regular disclaimer. I want to talk about a couple of specific things today. I watched the entire video of Deception Detective. Since I was talking about it, I figured I owed that to myself and I owed that to his channel. And I'm really glad that I did. I'm really glad that I spent the hour and 15 or whatever it was listening to it on regular speed. It was extremely educational in a lot of ways. I 100% disagree with them, and I'll go through that with you guys. And I think he left the door open for him to disagree with himself at some point in time too, which I think that's very respectable. I think we all should do that for ourselves. But I also wanted to talk about the guy. I wrote his name down because I'm so bad with names. What is his name? Carson, the guy at the end of Shan's last live, the guy who was on a live with Bullhorn Betty. So Carson from AWP. That was interesting. I don't think I've ever laid an eye on Carson. I think I'd heard his name, but I don't think I'd ever seen him. I gotta say, he's an extremely handsome young man, is he not? But I really want to talk about that part of the panel on Bullhorn Betty that Shan had at the very tail end of her last live, the night before last. She had 3 in a row. I guess they kept getting interrupted. And the last one was 45 minutes long. And so it's the last segment of that she plays the Bullhorn Betty panel. And man, is that good. So let me do my disclaimer. And so I also wanted to talk more about my trauma because you guys are rocking it. And I imagine that people are curious. And so I'd like to share to appease you, but also I'm being very selfish because it's been so awesome sharing with you guys. I feel like it's helped me move by strides that I didn't even know were coming because, the healing process is never ending and it's full of surprises. So I'll start with my disclaimer. Everything I say is simply my opinion for the sake of opening up a conversation, trying to have a discussion and learn something and be educational. All my videos to date have been made for YouTube. It's an entertainment platform. So I'm looking at my hair and thinking, what can I do? And it's so hard to know because what's left is right, what's right is left on your computer screen is just looking a little stringy. Who cares, right? It's only hair. Half of you guys aren't even watching, you're just listening. But I do like presenting to you guys in person. It is hard to trust anybody on YouTube, right? And these content creators that don't show their faces makes it even harder. Honestly, I mean, sure, somebody could show their face and still be BS, still be full of it. And somebody can be not showing their face and be extremely authentic and genuine. So that's not like the only indicator, but I just think it's a helpful human experience. So I know I like to see content creators, and I'm just happy to have my cool set. It's still set up. I haven't touched it because of the thing with the kid being sick. So, there's always the upshot to everything because I do love it. I've like tweaked it so many freaking times. So now to move it, and sure, I could probably set it up the exact same way in the other room, but you change one little thing and everything changes. So let's try to keep up with your chat, but I have so much content that I want to get into. So I will lose track of your chat just to, be candid and give you guys a heads up that I will do my best because you guys always have so many great things to say, great questions, great points. And CN Red Flags is usually a lurker. Well, lurkers are welcome. And yeah, I know. I figure that when I'm lurking, people think I'm not there because usually I love to engage when I'm in someone's chat, but I do have other things I need to do, focus on. And, if I'm folding laundry, I can't be stopping every 2 seconds to chat. So I lurk. I do. I confess. I love to see silent listeners step in every chance they can and give us an opportunity to be familiar with you. Oh, that's sweet, Sandra. Yeah, it is really cool to branch out. It is. I know. I mean, I've been doing some major branching out with my yoga teacher training. You guys, I'm halfway through. I just hit the halfway through mark. So I'm almost there. I'll be a certified yoga instructor. I'm getting really excited about it. I'm in a master's program that will continue on for many months, almost another 2 years. So, yeah, I told you, when I do something, I don't just do it. I have to like go all in. And if I didn't, I seriously wasn't going to make it through the teacher training. So I thought I'm either gonna just waffle and flounder, or I need to like double down and up my commitment. And it's extremely expensive. Yoga teacher trainings cost thousands of dollars, and then they take a lot of time too. And it's fun, but it's not all fun. It can be really tough. But in the yoga teacher training that I'm doing, I'm sharing with the group about the same trauma that I've been sharing with you guys about. So I guess we'll just talk about that first, because it's right on the forefront of my mind. Forgive me if I cry. I'm going to try not to, just because I want to stay focused. But if I cry, that's okay, right? I was going to tell you one of the hardest things. I can't remember. I think I've said this before. I think I might have said this in my last video, that one of the hardest things over the years was realizing that my sister almost passed away. And yeah, I did tell you guys that, because I was telling you about how red her red stuff was, the shade of it. And it was probably not until, I don't know, let's just say about 15 years later, that I realized, wow, she really almost didn't make it. And I kind of didn't even come close to not making it. She was in the back of the station wagon, like in the back, and I was like, the back seat was down so that it was like a bed, because we're traveling cross country. So it was me and her and the dog and the cat that were all back there, and my father was in the front seat, and he had his window cracked right down to his nose. I was sitting right behind him. We were in the parking lot at McDonald's. This was before the days of drive-through. So, we had to go into the restaurant to buy the food and use the restroom, of course, because we're traveling. But then we went back into the car and sat in the car to eat, which I thought was really weird, because I was like, shouldn't we be inside stretching our legs, since, we're in the car so much? Like, it would make sense to me to be in the car if we were continuing down the road. But no, we sat there in the parking lot of McDonald's, very far away from the establishment. It was a giant parking lot. We're like way, like, I'd exaggerate and say, a quarter mile away, but probably like 100 yards from the building. And we're sitting there with the car running, right? And we're in Arizona, and it's January. So you could argue that that was for heat, but it was really to carbon monoxide us, because like I told you, my father worked on the car himself. Always. He never hired a mechanic, and he had this genius IQ, and he knew what he was doing. He was fully aware. And this is where it gets really twisted. This is the hardest part, because for years I had to go back into denial and say, no, it had to be an accident, because there's no way that he would have done this, right? My sister's sitting in the back, and she's complaining that she's feeling really sick. She's feeling really woozy. She's feeling like she's going to pass out. She's feeling like she's going to throw up. And he was coaching her to die. Honest to God. He was like, it's okay. Just close your eyes. Just fall asleep. You'll be fine. And I'm sitting right behind him, like, just a few inches behind his head. And I'm thinking like he's just being a nice, nurturing father, saying things just to chill out and relax. But really, he was coaching her to die, straight up. I mean, this is as sick as it gets. This is like Chris Watts sick. This is like Susan Smith sick. This is like a lot of people sick. I won't name the people in the Kylie Rodney story that we suspect, but I do. I fully suspect. So he's coaching her to die. And in my years of healing, when I started to really put that together, I was just like, no way. He could not have, nobody would be coaching somebody to die, right? Nobody. So it took a couple of years for me to come to terms that, yeah, that's exactly what he was doing. He was coaching her to die. And I told you how the dog saved our lives because I wasn't feeling sick. Carbon monoxide generally doesn't make you feel sick. It generally is a silent killer. You're not going to feel anything at all. But so I didn't feel anything at all. I thought I was absolutely fine. But then the dog was about to throw up on my leg. So I opened the door and it was on the passenger side. And I fell out of the car. And that dog getting ready to vomit on my leg was what saved my life. Opening the door and falling onto the asphalt was what saved my life and my sister's life. So I was unconscious. I came to and was surrounded by, I don't know, 50 or 100 people and many, many medics and first responders. There were lights everywhere. And I remember coming to there on the asphalt, on the blacktop. But like I said, my sister was much, much more severely poisoned. She'd already been asleep for, I don't know, maybe like 15 or 20 seconds before I opened the door. So she was scared. She was passing out. She wasn't feeling good. And she knew something wasn't right. I mean, she was 13 or actually 14. And I was 11 and a half. So she had an even sharper spidey sense and wit because she spent her life not only protecting herself, but protecting her little sister too. So she knew shit wasn't right and she was afraid to fall asleep. She knew that something was up. And she doesn't remember anything in the parking lot. I don't think she remembers anything in the hospital either. But the other thing I wanted to say about it was that when they confronted my father and he thought he had it all planned out, he thought he knew exactly what he was going to say, right? So he basically had his own little script. But when they were harping on him about the carbon monoxide level in her blood, making it that color, the lack of oxygen, and when he accidentally said, "I've never heard of carbon monoxide," and they knew he was 100% bullshit. They absolutely knew it. And I described to you on Friday how they just kind of collapsed and were just like so frustrated and just ready to like pound him into the floor. But I thought about it over the weekend, and what I saw was I saw them not believe him, right? So I saw them not trusting him, and I saw them, their response was extremely visceral. And there was no doubt that I knew that they thought he was lying and that they wanted to pummel him. And I thought they were wrong. I thought that they were incorrect. That's how I rationalized it. So not knowing that, of course, he'd heard of carbon monoxide since I was 11 and a half and had never heard of it. And I thought, well, he's never heard of it either. And these poor professionals over here just don't believe him. But I believed him 100% because I didn't know any better. Once I got older, that was part of how I put it all together, was like, oh my goodness, of course an adult has heard of carbon monoxide, even if you're not well educated, even if you're not a genius, even if you don't work on your own car, you've freaking heard of it, right? So that's where he 100% fucked up. And that's why they basically wouldn't let him leave town for a few days. They tried to continue to interrogate him and investigate him. And once he realized they didn't have enough to hold him, he took off. They weren't done. They weren't done with him, but he was done with them. So yeah, that's that part of the story. And I really appreciate you guys listening. I really appreciate your kind condolences and sympathy. And like I said, my main goal is for my own increased awareness and understanding. And quite frankly, I want to inspire other people to tell their stories and talk about their traumas. I know it's hard. And all the years I spent not talking about it, and then when I first started talking about it, and I wasn't so fluent with my thoughts and feelings and my vocabulary, and I would tell someone that I was close to, and their response was almost always the same. It was like, "Oh no, your father loves you. He would never do that to you." So these were people that knew him. But as time passed, there were people who responded with, "Oh yeah, I always knew there was something up with him." So um, he was a con artist. He was a scammer. It was really easy for him to manipulate people. But there were a few people, very far and few between, that he couldn't trick, that he just couldn't. My grandfather was one of them, my mother's dad, and my mother's mom too. I mean, they never fell for his crap, but there were a few other family friends that didn't fall for it either. But what was so unhelpful was when I would tell someone and they'd say, whether they knew him or not, like, "Oh no, he would never do that. You know, a father would never do that to their child." And I'd just be thinking, especially if it was somebody who didn't know him, like, you don't even know this person. Like, what are you talking about? And of course, we all like to think that a parent would never do that to a child, but we all know better too. And he had the same motivations that all these other people had. The ones I just mentioned, Chris Watts and Susan Smith, like wanting to hook up with somebody, money playing a part, um, and then just the whole like damaged goods in his own history. He got dropped off when he was 5 years old with his 4-year-old sister. His biological mother dropped him and the sister off at an orphanage because their dad was away at the war, and she was kind of schizophrenic and she was sick of it. So she just took him to the orphanage. And then when the dad came back a year later, he had a new wife and they got them out of the orphanage. But that year in the orphanage, I think, did a lot of damage, obviously. The abandonment, I mean, abandonment issues are severe for all of us, every single one of us. But what else did I want to share about that? So that grandfather that adopted him and his sister out of the hospital is the same grandfather whose dad was full-blood Irishman and mom was full-blood Native American. And so he had his own issues because, quite frankly, the level of chaos and violence and abuse that exists in Native American reservations, like the one where he was born, it almost like starts, the level is so high, it almost starts where our regular cultural levels leave off. I mean, they're a sovereign nation, they govern themselves, they have their own police, they have their own laws. A lot of things go unreported. The type of thing that happened with us in the McDonald's parking lot with my father is not a big deal in that framework. In our culture, it's a huge deal, huge. But living right there in Marysville, Washington, in my 40s, when I had my first 3 kids, and working as a psychotherapist and seeing a lot of this clientele that was from the reservation, it was a while before I realized that's where I'm from. That's where my family story starts, as far as I know it. And so I was seeing it completely from an outsider's perspective, like, wow, this is crazy, the stuff that these people have endured. And then making that connection was just like electrifying. And it really put everything in perspective for me to understand what I think I've coined this phrase. I don't know, maybe somebody else did. It doesn't really matter. I call it the generational hand-me-downs of problems. So that's all I want to say about that. I'm 23 minutes into my video. I really want to talk about the cases. I appreciate you guys listening. I'm going to read up on a couple of your comments. And just to be clear, those applauses were for your yoga accomplishments. Well, the yoga is just really inspiring for longevity and health and honesty. So I'm going to keep encouraging everybody I know to do yoga, whether you're interested or not. I mean, if you're not interested, of course, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to like shove something down your throat that you don't want. But as long as you're doing some type of exercise, something, and just doing things for your health. So when you're doing something like yoga, of course, like any other athletic lifestyle, you need to sleep well, you need to eat well, you need to take good care of yourself. So it all goes together. And that's always important no matter what age you are, but especially as we get older, it's more and more important. Right, Mark? Hey, mom first. That is messed up. Glad you and your sister survived. I know. And it is really the dog. Somebody asked on Friday if the dog was still around. So this was like 45 years ago. I'm old. I'm 56 right now. So it was 45 years ago. It was at the end of January. So I just passed the 45 year anniversary. And, we'd had the dog for, I want to say, a year or so. And we continued to have the dog for another 6 months, maybe another year. Before he got hit by a car. And I had said, like, he served his purpose of saving our lives. And I just wanted to bring it up because I hope I didn't sound callous. I loved that dog like nobody's business. That dog was so precious. Aside from the fact that he saved our lives, he was just the bomb. So I didn't want anyone to think that I was just like, oh, well, he saved our lives, so it's okay that he's gone. It wasn't okay when he died. It wasn't okay at all. And I loved him so much that I had a dream years after he passed away that he spoke to me in English, not Spanglish, not Truckanese, regular English. And we're just sitting next to each other at the top of like some stairs, like on like a platform, like an amphitheater kind of thing. And he said something to me, and I turned and I looked at him and I said, "Did you just say something? Did you just speak?" And he looked at me. He said, "No." And that was the whole dream. So he was like a person to me. But anyway. Okay, let's get on with the cases. So the honesty that I have with myself and with you guys about that trauma really helps me understand some of the nuances in these cases, and bringing up Kylie Rodney right away, because that's most of us, that's why we're here. That's what brought us together. And some people are really good liars. Sami is a really good liar. I will give her that. Chris Watts is a really good liar. Most liars are really good at it because most people don't lie. Most people just don't feel comfortable doing it. Our bodies tell us not to. We're raised being told not to. But people that do it usually do it compulsively and pathologically, and they can't not lie because they're trained. Let's just say in general, they're trained from their parents that if they tell the truth, they get in trouble. So they figure out what the right answer is to a question before they answer it. And that's how they stay out of trouble when they're growing up. And then it just becomes a habit. And then they just kind of unconsciously have this correlation that truth gets you in trouble. So even if it's something really immaterial, like what did you eat for lunch? Instead of saying pepperoni pizza, they'll say, I had a falafel, like just stupid stuff. They'll just lie about anything because it's habitual. And sometimes they think it's funny. They're just like, oh, isn't it wild how anything I say people believe? And it's like, yeah, that's because most of us in the general population are taught not to lie. We're taught to trust what other people say unless we have good reason not to. And we just don't expect that people are going to be so stupid to be lying to themselves and to everyone all the time, because there's nothing important except the truth. There's absolutely zero that is important except the truth. So for people that don't understand that, they're extremely sick. And you can take an example like Sami Smith. Perfect example. You can see that she's a very, very sick person. Nicole Kessinger, a very, very sick person. Chris Watts. I mean, these are all prime examples. But in that part of the interview with, was it Cameron? Is that his name? Hey, Shan, I see you're in here. Thanks for coming in. Carson, from the tail end of your last live, those minutes of Carson on the panel with Bullhorn Betty, and when he's saying, essentially, I'm just going to cut through the crap. He's basically saying that it's not possible for her to have driven in the water. He's saying that it's not possible for her body to have turned and floated through there, through the car seats. He's saying that he says that it is possible that the car turned on its nose and did a somersault. Remember, the car was 15.5 feet in length and the water was 14 feet deep. So I guess maybe theoretically it could do that in the water, even though the butt would still be up out of the water. But there's not going to be that floating thing that they describe. So he's basically saying that none of the story is possible. And then, as Shan said, he's getting texted and blowed up on his devices. It looks like he's getting emailed, and then he says, I gotta shut it down. I'm done here, right? So he said way too much. But one of the most important things that he said was what Ryan Upchurch was the first one to say, the suspicion that Upchurch had of the possibility that maybe the water was searched thoroughly by all those law enforcement officials that cleared it and said the vehicle wasn't there. So once it was cleared, the criminals thought, well, that's the best place to hide it then. And maybe that's why roadside assistance Nick had to get AWP over to Boca to give them more time to submerge the vehicle into the water. It's just a theory, but it seems to me that that's pretty much what Carson was saying on that Bullhorn Betty panel. So I'd never seen that, Shan. I was so glad you showed that. I never had seen that. So thank you. It was amazing. I need to catch up on the rest of your stuff from the other night too. And it's weird, isn't it, that your lives kept coming undone and then you had to restart them. So FYI, if that happens, of course, I'll try to restart. But I wanted to let you guys know I have my mic on right in front of me. I'm not wearing it because it seems like when I was wearing it the other day that there was like a little bit of static once in a while, like maybe when it would rub on my shirt or something. So I just have it attached here under my computer, and it's a good mic. So let me know how the sound is, because I think it works well, except for when there's that static. Deception saying she lied for attention. Okay, so that's the next thing I want to get into, and we are at half an hour. I'm not on a tight time frame today. I listened to the whole Deception Detective today, and I'm so glad that I did, because it really wasn't fair for me to size any of it up without listening to it. But let me keep up with some of your comments here too. Deception saying she lied for attention, and that can be true, but I think there is more underlying, such as jealousy. And does the jealousy go deeper? Well, and I just want to say, in all fairness, he does a good job of couching things so that he can revisit the situation and he can change his mind without being flip-floppy. But just saying, this is all I know. I've only watched a minute of her interview. He said he'd never seen any of this before, right? And it's pretty brazen of a person to take. You always need to have a baseline for a person. That's one of the reasons why in interrogations, they try to get really chatty with people. They try to get comfortable with people. They want to know what they're like when they're relaxed. It makes a big difference what the baseline is to then be able to gauge what it is that you're seeing. So Scammy has a weird baseline. Like, she's not a normal person at all. I mean, she's not even a normal narcissist. She's like 1,000 degrees above that, not to exaggerate like she does. But yeah, she's like I want to say like a manic borderline personality disorder. I mean, exaggeration is one of the things that borderlines do. It's one of the things that people do when they have a mania. But remember how she said, like, there were thousands of people answering calls, and they were um, millions of tips, and there were hundreds, maybe thousands, but I think it was hundreds of videos being taken. There were even videos of people taking videos. Like, that girl exaggerated so much, and she never stopped. I mean, that's just who she is, and who how she it's how she's wired. It's her hard wiring. So for this deception detective, um, he says he's a trained attorney, and I believe him, but he needs to understand personality disorders to some extent before he can really analyze anybody. So I will critique his critique of her, because I feel like he was way off, and I feel like he was the type of person who's receptive to that feedback. So, not that what I say is true, but I think he has that same attitude, that he knows that what he says might not be true, that it's his professional opinion, and that's all it is, a professional opinion. So it's easy to have two professionals disagree with each other. It happens all the time, and people debate, and sometimes people change their minds on things. And I think that it would be possibly important for us to give him the feedback that we feel like is our direct and honest feedback, that it would be pertinent to know more about the whole picture. It would be pertinent for him to know more about Sami. And he also said, like, he was done with her, but that he would be willing to critique other people in the case. And probably some of us are scared to hear him, like, basically cover for all these people. I didn't get the impression that he was covering for her so much as he was just fooled by her, thinking that she's doing this for the attention, when, yeah, she is. Obviously, she's doing it for the attention. But there were a lot of things that he said that I don't think he realized the kind of truth that he was getting at. So I loved when he said, you need to ask yourself why somebody is lying. Like, are they lying because they're guilty? Are they lying because they want attention? What's the reason? And, he kept saying, my audience is the smartest audience on YouTube. Okay, I think that's a lie, and he knows it. My audience is the smartest audience on YouTube. No, I think that's really, like, tacky. That's him just kind of buttering people up so that they like him. I mean, come on. I think there's a lot of intelligent people that watch YouTube and that have a lot of good questions and a lot of good input. And I just think it's funny that he kept saying that. But he said some things that made me think, and I appreciate that. I'm really glad I invested the time and attention into listening to the whole thing. So the way Sami says, when she introduces Magdalena Larson into the story, and she says that she left about 10 minutes in with her boyfriend, and then she goes back and corrects herself and says with her boyfriend Ross, like with her boyfriend Ross, as if somebody might have thought that she was leaving with Kylie's boyfriend, right? She wanted to specify that it was Mags's boyfriend that Mags left with. And I thought that was really interesting. Coming from Sami, it makes me wonder if her boyfriend didn't leave with somebody else. I did really like what Deception Detective was saying about the ride, and how that was the part of the story that he didn't buy at all, because she was saying that Kylie was going to give her a ride, and then she immediately was looking for another ride, and then she had to stop herself and think, because she was realizing that her story wasn't adding up. And I thought, what if Sami's ride to leave was supposed to be this is all speculation, just my opinion. What if Nate Hamburglar was supposed to give her a ride home? And what if he was out fooling around with Kylie? I don't know. It's just a thought. Just a thought. But I think we've all heard over the year and a half since this happened that Nate was hanging out with Kylie that night and that they'd been hanging out for a couple of weeks. So that's what teenagers do when they go to parties, is they hook up, they go have some privacy for a while, go for a ride, or just go sit on the rocks and look at the water. So I just thought, what if that was her ride? What if? Why is Scammy's ride to and from the party still a black hole? That's a real simple question that we need to ask ourselves, I think. It's important to go back to the beginning. Yes. Yes. I never heard it was cleared. They never said it was put in after our search. I think they did say that it was cleared. They said that to AWP, that Prosser was cleared. The whole thing. It was not in there. They knew that. I think that's my opinion of what had happened back then, Mark. The gap between headspace and seat was 8 inches. No, it may be 8 inches from the ceiling, probably, because we do have a CRV. Ours is a 2011. Kylie's was a 2013. So maybe 8 inches. If you have the headrests all the way down, I bet it's 8 inches, because if you have them all the way up, it's probably only 4 or 5 inches. So again, Kylie was tall, so she probably had that headrest up. But and yeah, the headrests for the back seat, I would think, would be further than 8 inches apart, because you can sit a third person in the middle of the back seat. But not a lot of room. And what Carson was saying is that her body would have had to be vertical, like her hips would have had to be vertical for her to float back there. But again, how is she going to float if the car's tail is up in the dry air when it's doing its somersault in 14 feet of water? So that rules that out. So I think basically what Carson was saying is that none of those elements made sense. It didn't make sense that she would have driven in the water from the evidence that he saw. It didn't make sense that she could have been in the front and gone to the back from the evidence that he saw. None of it made sense. So it's always important to go back to the beginning, Shan. Absolutely. I'll be doing more of that today while I work. Ellie never said clear. Ellie never said the car was put there after. Right. They never said the car was put there after. Ryan Upchurch said that it might have been. And then Carson said something to that effect at the end of Shan's last live, that clip that she played from Bullhorn Betty. He definitely said that that was one possibility. And then he said that right before all of his devices started to go off like fireworks, right? Even when you think you have went through it too much, nope, go over it again. Exactly, Sandra. And that's what I really enjoyed about listening to Deception Detective analyze it, was going over all the stuff that I've gone over what feels like 100 times, but I'm sure it's just a couple of dozen times. But it was going over it from a different perspective too, listening to him talk about it, even though I completely disagreed with him on a lot of the stuff that he said about Scammy. And let me add that he also said that he believes that Nicole Kessinger is a victim and 100% innocent. He also said that he believes Amanda Knox innocent. like this guy, he probably just thinks they're all so pretty that they couldn't possibly have done anything like that. Amanda Knox is the furthest thing from innocent. If you guys haven't yet looked at some of True Crime Rocket Science's work that he did, a very large body of work researching the Merideth Kercher case. I'm pretty sure he wrote 3 different books, but he has a wonderful series, and I will link it again in the description here. It's fascinating because everything that we saw on our mainstream media came through CNN. CNN footed the bill for the entire Knox family. That whole thing was just a dog and pony show. And the main goal was to have people not hate Americans and for people to feel safe to continue to send their kids to the universities in that Italian town. I think it's Pergua. Is that how you say it? Something like that. But it's a university city. It's a small city of big schools, and people from all over the world go there to study. And they couldn't possibly have an American girl doing this to her roommate. I mean, that looks bad for everyone. So that case was very, very poorly handled by media, in my opinion. And True Crime Rocket Science does an amazing job of looking at it from a non-CNN perspective. He got a lot of the information that never came through the CNN airwaves over to us Americans. But the other thing I want to say about that case, which is so frustrating, like, I used to like that attorney that represented Amanda Knox, but her foundation of why Amanda Knox was innocent and not guilty was because she was an honor student and she had 3 jobs before she went to Italy. So how on earth could an honors student who had 3 jobs do such a thing? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. So Amanda's story doesn't add up, and her behavior, I mean, we all saw her making out with her boyfriend the same day of and doing handstands or cartwheels or something like that in the interview room. The major piece of evidence, and I don't want to belabor the point, but the major piece of evidence that we never heard about in this country was Merideth Kercher's DNA found on a knife that was in the drawer of Amanda Knox's boyfriend's kitchen, his apartment. So I'm forgetting that young man's name right now, but he had been together with Amanda Knox for 6 days. He'd never had a girlfriend in his life. And she had been sleeping around with a lot of people in that town. She'd only been there for a couple of months. Her and the roommate, Meredith, barely knew each other because they both had been traveling while the couple of months that they were renting that apartment together. So they didn't know each other for the 2 months. They only knew each other for a few weeks, basically. And like I said, I don't want to belabor it, but it's interesting to me that Deception Detective was snowed by Foxy Noxy and NK. Like, I already didn't think that his opinion was something that I agreed with at all about Sami. But then when he was throwing these other cases out there that he saw that through the same rose-colored glasses, I was just like, okay, so he's a guy, and not to offend any guys, but he thinks with the wrong head. Like, these are all extremely attractive, hot women. It's hard to think of them as unalivers. I mean, it is. I think that's why a lot of people get fooled by Scott Peterson too. He's an attractive man, and my father was a very attractive man. People like to think that the only people that do things like this are the people with the Charles Manson eyes. And it's not true. I mean, a lot of them have Charles Manson eyes, but when they have the Charles Manson eyes, to run as far as you can, right? It's the ones without the Charles Manson eyes that are the most dangerous, because there aren't the obvious flags to let you know. And while I'm bringing up Charles Manson, I mean, he was a good looking guy too, once upon a time. I mean, that's how he got people to do his crazy crimes. He was a very good looking man when he was young, before he went way off the deep end. Where did they say that to the public? If cleared, then it was not cleared really. And how did they say it was put in after? And we need to find out how and who. Thank you, Mark. Yeah. So the law enforcement spoke with Doug, I think, in AWP and told them that Prosser was clear. And their story is that they would have gone to Prosser anyway, except for Nick intercepting them at the Best Buy. And they were like, oh, well, we were going to search Boca anyway, so let's go to Boca first. So that basically bought another day of them not searching Prosser. And Doug said it's cleared unless they search it themselves. Right. Doug says it's not cleared unless they searched it themselves, I think is what you meant to say. Mom's first always. Thanks so much for being here, you guys. Where's my thumb? My thumb. Please hit that like button. And don't forget to share the video if you like it. Make sure you're still subscribed and turn on your notification bell to ring. And yeah, I am going to try to keep consistent with the kind of the earlier in the day lives, just because I'm sharper earlier in the day. And I know that that's how a lot of people have come to know my channel. And so I'd like to just try to remain consistent with that as much as I can. And I am trying to get monetized too. So we'll see if this could be a source of income. That would be nice, because, I don't like being spread so thin. And I have a heavy commitment to my true crime. I have a heavy commitment to my yoga, and I have a heavy commitment to my family. And I'd like to just keep it at that. Like, I'm so happy to not have that paycheck, even though, it was good while it lasted. I mean, it was just too much. And yeah, eventually the yoga will pay too, but not for a while, or at least not until summer. I guess summer is when I could start making money with that. Mark says, I think he said they told not to search there. They never heard cleared from LE officially. Okay, that could be more accurate, Mark. I appreciate you sharing. I'm still mad about this mess. Yes, and see, you're really good at focusing on the nitty gritty, those details that make all the difference in the world, Mark. So don't stop. It doesn't matter if you butt heads with people. It doesn't matter if you rub people the wrong way. You are super sharp about those types of things. Real, you get back to the basics, to the brass tacks, as they say. And that's where we need to look. Sorry, I think the text showed the wrong tone from me to you. Yes, it can do that, can't it? Which is one of the reasons why panels are so good. That was fun being on your panel last week. I appreciate that. And I don't know if you were saying that to me or to Mom first, but yeah, we know you have a good heart and that your heart's in the right place. That was another thing Deception Detective kept saying that I totally disagreed with. He was saying that he didn't care what someone's motive was for what they did. If it brought everybody closer to the truth, then he was okay with that. And I see his point, and to an extent I agree with that, but at the same time, it makes a big difference if someone's got malintent or if they're coming from a place of kindness and caring. It makes a huge difference. To me, it makes all the difference in the world. And yes, what was that? I'm not even going to look. I'm drinking veggie juice with apple juice in it to make it more palatable. Something behind me fell. You could probably hear that crash. I'm not even going to worry about it. Not looking. Doesn't matter. So let's see. Yes, C and Red Flag says, I remember the cartwheels. Doug said it in an interview, or no, maybe when he was just in the boat to start the search. Yeah, Mom, I think you got it. I think that's what it was when he was talking to the camera in the boat. Um, and hey, now, Jazz, have we not learned not to judge book by covers? How far back am I? I'm like 6 minutes back. Let me get caught up because I'm not sure what you're responding to. But yeah, I was really judging the Deception Detective, not by the cover, but just from what you guys were saying about how he was all snowed by Scamming. And I was just like, I don't have time for more of that crap. No, thank you. But I took the time and I'm glad that I did. Let's see. We all have our own bias colored by our experiences. Right. And it's always, when you're face to face with someone, it's always easier to get won over by them, in my opinion. I mean, I've had that experience many times in family court and mental health court. When you hear the stories from other family members or from other professionals, it's easy to judge the person. But then when you talk to the person yourself, it's a totally different perspective. So I think that that's important. And then the order that you talk to people, like if you talk to the person first and you get their version and you understand where they're coming from, and then you get the criticism from the people around them that think that they did wrong and that they're awful, it's kind of a more of a fair and balanced perspective, in my opinion, than when you read about them and you hear all the bad things that they did. And it's easy to think they're just like awful. And then you meet them and you realize they're not so bad, and that maybe there's some things about them that are really endearing. But it's an unfair advantage in that sense that if you hear the bad stuff first, you're not going to get your own opinion of this person. You're going to get other people's opinion. AWP was told there was no need to search Prosser because it was already done. Doug said something like, if AWP doesn't do it themselves, then they don't say it cleared. Exactly. And that's their motto, and that's a really good motto. Absolutely. AWP's video part is when they get into the water. I would have to recheck myself on this video. Don't be hating. I'm already faded from the day. I don't know if you're on the East Coast time where we're at 2:45, or if you're in a different country or different time zone. But yeah, I mean, in my normal life, by 5 o'clock, I'm kind of toast. You know, if I'm working full time, 5 o'clock, I am done. Like, I'm not going to make much sense after 5. It's the way I look at it. Like when the evening news comes on, like I can pay attention to that, and then I'm just like chilling. Breaking up, I will watch replay. Am I breaking up? I hope I'm not. Let's see. Doesn't say cleared. They just said it was searched good. Yeah, I'd have to rewatch to know exactly. I thought that they essentially were saying that it was cleared, but I could be putting my own words to the idea. Angels playing around in the fun set. Oh yeah, that's what was knocking down a few minutes ago. Absolutely. So what I wanted to say too about my critique of the Deception Detective is that he is very superficial in his covering of the Kylie Rodney case, in his analysis of Scamming, and in his analysis, from what I could see, of Nicole Kessinger and Amanda Knox. I think anybody just looking at the surface briefly could have that same opinion, but anybody that did a deeper dive would not have that opinion about either NK or Foxy Noxy. I mean, they both are extremely mischievous and I want to say maniacal, manipulative. They're conniving. They're absolutely like smart in that same way that my biological father was very smart. But having that type of high IQ intelligence, in my opinion, is not smart. Like, remember back in the 90s when people were talking about emotional intelligence, not just intellectual intelligence? And that makes so much sense. Like somebody like this guy with the Kansas City three friends in the backyard that passed away. And, he's a scientist and he has a high IQ. But where's the emotional intelligence? Because even to pretend that he didn't know what was going on and that these friends of his were deceased in his backyard, for him to be a little emotional and act like he cared and act like it was horrifying would have sold his BS better. For him to just be like, oh, well, I was sleeping. What? They're deceased out there? Whatever. That's a giveaway right away. And same with in the Kylie Rodney case. We never heard Kylie's mother blame herself the way any parent would in a situation like that. Most parents would say, if I only hadn't let her stay out, or if only I had gone and picked her up myself, or if only I told her, no, you're not going. You have those other plans to go to the hot August nights with us, and you need to come with us because we love you and we want to hang out with you. The woulda, shoulda, coulda. I know I've talked about that in this case many moons back, but we would also hear that from Kylie's friends. We would also hear that from Jägermeister. We would hear the rumination of, if only I had done this, if only I had done that, people blaming themselves and kicking themselves. That's a normal thing to do in the grieving process. It's part of the bargaining when you get to those 5 stages or the 6 stages of grieving. You first have the anger and the denial, or the not denial and then the anger. And then you've got the bargaining, and then you've got the sadness, you've got the acceptance, and then you've got the kind of tying it into a story with a bigger meaning and subscribing something meaningful to the loss. So, we didn't see that grieving process with the family members. We didn't see that grieving process with the friends. What we saw was a lot of splaining, right? Just like with the guy over there in Kansas City, just a lot of explaining. And when somebody that you care about passes away, you're not explaining anything. You're just wasted. You're just devastated. You're just exasperated and sad. And the last thing you're going to care about is explaining this and explaining that and rationalizing this and rationalizing that and talking about how when you woke up in the morning and you ran to her bed and you saw she wasn't there, and then you ran to the window and you saw her car wasn't there, and then you grabbed your phone. And no, the first thing you do when you wake up in this day and age is you look at your phone, right? I mean, I know we're not supposed to sleep with them near us, but I think most of us do. And a lot of us, that's our clock too. So we wake up and we look at our phone to see what time it is. If it's not waking us up with an alarm or a phone call or a text or something. But yeah, telling the story out of order is one of the ways that people give themselves away. They think that they have their alibi memorized, but then they get thrown a curveball, and that's how they give themselves away. So people who are really good liars, like my father, even though he's very intelligent, and that's part of his problem, is that he thinks he's smarter than everybody else. And don't you think Sami thinks she's smarter than everybody else? I'd say so. So, having a high IQ is not always smart. A lot of times people who have that type of intelligence lack common sense, and they lack the social skills, and they lack being receptive and responsive to other people's cues. That's where they usually end up telling on themselves. Um, and thank you, Mark. I don't know what was well said 6 minutes ago, but I'll go ahead and highlight that. I appreciate the compliment. Oh, the EQ, IQ and EQ, HR recruiting still talks EQ. Oh, cool. See, that's why you're so sharp. I always forget your HR recruiting. You're really good at that. I would imagine that you'll be getting nabbed up for a position in no time. And then we're not going to have you here on YouTube the way we've had such awesome access to you and your brain leaks. You got the good brain leaks. So guilty. The KC drug maker, run to rehab. 3 grown men don't freeze, and 3 times fentanyl amount that unalives. Right. So yeah, I know that the final results are confirmed that it was fentanyl, marijuana, and cocaine, and about 3 times the amount of fentanyl that will kill somebody. So I still am curious why he's alive, and I'm also curious the backstory that I've heard from people that went to high school with all of them, that all 4 of those guys went to high school together, that the 3 decedents were very tight all the way back in high school and have been very tight since. And they're all like more like regular Joes, working class types of individuals, where he was this guy with this high IQ who thought he was really smart, who didn't have the tightness with the friend group. And he also most likely didn't have the types of relationships that they had, not just with each other, but with romantic interests too. Like one of them was engaged, one of them was a father. I'm not sure the background on all of them, but it sounds like the guy who survived, that probably mixed the deadly concoction, that he very well might have been jealous of them, that this might not have been so accidental. And again, whether it's an accident or not, they're still deceased. And it might matter when it comes to sentencing, but he should still be charged one way or another. And I still think going into rehab is to hide behind the HIPAA laws for sure. Had he been like an emotional train wreck and go into rehab within a day or two, then yeah, he would seem a lot less guilty of some malintent. I talked about how Lindsay is involved and is why she never had the normal grieving. Yeah. This one light is so annoying. It has some alarm that goes off every day at 2:57. Sorry about that. I'll have to deprogram that. Let's see. Correct. Phone first. She did not run to the area or call Kylie and friends and then the police. Did she start the plan and get Scammy and all in motion? Right. Ooh, Sunset Salty Sage. It always comes back to the money. Follow the money. Absolutely. Nice call. Very nice call. Because yeah, that was a close game. Kansas City Chiefs won 13-12. Extremely close. Very exciting when your team wins in a situation like that. And yeah, wagers on the game for sure. He probably lost big time and didn't want to pay anybody. So, Oh, I'm so glad I just saw my note. Let me take a drink of my veggie juice real quick. Okay. I'm sure you guys have caught this so many times. So many, many, many times. but have you really caught it? Because I've caught it so many times, but never quite like I caught it today in listening to Deception Detective and Scammy when she says that she's talking to Tony Dodge in that interview, and she says that Kylie's mother is fully invested in her life, right? Fully invested in her life. It's a weird thing to say. It's not really how you would say it. Invested in her life, fully invested in her life. Like, what parent isn't fully invested in their kid's life, whether they have an actual financial investment or not? But her saying that, Scammy saying that Lindsay is fully invested in Kylie's life, I think she let the cat out of the bag. Yeah, I do. The lodge was on the market. Why? And not, it's not on the market for a while and not open. Why? Yeah, Mark. Good catch. Good catch, both Sunset and Mark. Thank you. Okay, another criticism for Deception Detective, and he should take this very well because I would think that he would have the same criticism of himself, honestly, if he's being honest. He did not bat an eyelash when Scammy said in her interview with Tony Dodge, we all just remembered today about the car, about the bull, with the horn, the cow with the horns and the hubcaps and the sunroof. We all just remembered today. He did not bat an eyelash. He did not discuss that. He just skated right by it. I think he just got snowed. And when these people are talking so fast, these gaslighters that are so good at gaslighting because it's all they do, it is impossible to keep up with them, you guys. They are going a mile a minute, and you can't like stop them at every word and rehash it, can you? I mean, you can try, but then it makes you feel freaking crazy if you try. There was a story out there saying Kylie had to teach herself. Mother was helping her. I don't know what you mean, Mom. There was a story out there saying Kylie had to teach her herself. Mother was helping her. I'm so curious what you mean by that. Let's see. I don't know what I meant when I wrote this note. It's the parents' fault if they're lying. It's the parents' fault if they're lying. And I knew when I wrote it that I wasn't going to remember what I meant, but I thought by adding just the one little word that I would. Yeah, I don't remember. I wish I did because I know it was good. Whatever it was. Okay, so can we talk about Idaho 4 for a minute, or do you guys want to finish up first talking about Kylie Rodney? Because I watched a Get a Clue, and he talked about Papa Rogers. And if you guys have paid attention to the Idaho 4 case, I think that Papa Roger stuff is extremely important and telling. And the things that this Get a Clue channel was saying about it, I thought was really interesting. Let's see. I agree. Probably homeschooled herself. Lindsay does not seem devoted, dedicated, or smart enough. Absolutely. And she had the place to run too, right? WS was not helping her. WS. Morals, parents teach the kids that lying is okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably what I meant. Mark. Thank you. Thank you for trying to help me remember if it's the parents' fault if they're lying. Um, yeah. Yeah. The truth is all we have. It's all we have. And no matter how bad it is, it's got to be dealt with. Absolutely. I mean, I know there's a lot of difficult things in life that we stumble into, and we've got to be clear with ourselves and be clear with our own truth and be clear with the people in our lives, or we're going to just make it worse for ourselves and everyone around us. Um, Deception Detective said he was going to watch for his first time, but that's not true because he mentions Nick interviews, so he made his decision already. Oh, Miss W, aren't you so clever? Picking up on that? You go. That is awesome. Good catch. Very good catch. No one. Okay, no. Let me start over. Okay, one hand not working. Lindsay didn't help Kylie with homeschool. Yes, gotcha. I figured that's what you meant. Thank you. Um, Hi, Miss W Lightning. I really got to stop using one hand to type. I know, it's so hard. I think Lindsay was jealous of Kylie. Yeah, and especially if Grandpa was trying to give the lodge to Kylie, which it kind of seems like he was. Um, but yeah, Kylie had everything going for her, and she was about to be free, and she had her whole life ahead of her. I mean, Lindsay got to live in that nice lodge, but that's a lot of work to run a B&B. And then she had that significant other that is questionable. And, having a small boy, he was 8 at the time, to take care of and homeschool. It's very challenging. I mean, you guys know I have 4 kids, and it is challenging. Absolutely. Being a mom is challenging. Running a business like that is challenging. Having your business and home be one and the same place is extremely stressful. Oh my goodness, why is my battery thing saying that it's not plugged in? Hold on. Why would it say that? Maybe it just wasn't clicked all the way. It might have just been like half a millimeter not